This is Angel from Stewberries, and today I want to share with you this super exciting DIY I just finished, and I wanted to share with you. They are resin epoxy photo cubes, and you can see I made this one of my daughter and this family one, and I also made this cool cube of my husband and me. Your photo is being suspended in like an ice cube. Kind of cool. I really like them, and they stand. If you're interested in how I made these, continue watching. All right, for this project, you're gonna need something to stir your epoxy. I'm using a tongue depressor, a cup, and this one has the measurements for the 1-to-1 epoxy ratio, a heat gun to pop the bubbles. I'm using this blade knife. I don't really know what that's called. I got these little pink boxes from Michael's in the dollar bin. And I also have a pair of tweezers just to move the picture around if they're not in the right spot. And here we go. So here I'm just using the bottom of the box to kind of trace an outline of how big I need the picture to be. And I'm using my paper trimmer to just cut down the picture and making sure to have straight lines. I did a little test fit. I'm just gonna do that with my remaining photos. This is also a perfect use for those wallet-sized prints. You can see that one on the side is my daughter's school picture, and it's the perfect use for it. So here I'm gonna start mixing my epoxy. I am using ProMarine Epoxy, and it is mixed in a 1-to-1 ratio. I find that this little cup really helps to make sure that it's mixed properly, and I'll put a link to those in the description and the epoxy below. I am gonna mix this epoxy up, and in the video it looks like I am mixing like crazy, but actually you really want to mix that epoxy quite slowly and kind of fold the two parts together to try your best to minimize the bubbles. I find that if you stir it a little bit slower, you'll have a better product at the end. Now, after you finish mixing your epoxy, you want to go ahead and let your epoxy rest for about 5 minutes before you go pouring it into the molds. You are going to pour in about 3 ounces of epoxy to begin with in each mold, and that is going to form the back of our photo squares. We will end up pouring a couple of different layers to sandwich our picture in the middle. And to start off, we're going to put 3 ounces of epoxy in the mold. I'm using the heat gun to pop any bubbles, and I'll let it rest for 1 to 2 minutes and then come back with the heat gun to let the bubbles kind of rise to the top. Now I've let this epoxy rest for about 20 minutes, and for some reason, sometimes some of them dry a little bit faster than the others. And you can see this one in the middle. It was quite firm in the middle, and so the picture didn't stick to that base layer. So I mixed up a little bit of epoxy that I can put down first, and then I reapplied the photo. That's where your tweezers really come in handy. So I'm just moving that epoxy out, hitting with the heat gun to remove some of the bubbles, and then I'm just dropping that photo in there and using the tweezers just to get it centered and placed right where I want it, and then covering it up with about 2 ounces of epoxy over top. The finished cubes are about 6 ounces of epoxy, so we put 3 on the bottom, 2 over top of the photo right now, and then we'll use the final 1 ounce to kind of level the top. So here I'm just using the tweezers to get the pictures all centered and ready to dry. I'm just giving a once over with the heat gun, and then I'm going to let those dry overnight. So here I'm just flexing the box corners to the outside, and I'm pushing on the bottom, and those photo cubes just pop right out. Came out like butter. And there you go. I'm using my little razor tool to cut off any of the edges, and you just want to go over it lightly. You don't want to gouge into the epoxy. Just taking off any rough edges or any parts that are just kind of hanging out above. I'm going to use some fine grit sandpaper, and I'm just smoothing out the sides. It's not scratching the middle, it's just taking off the rough edges, and it's going to create a better finished product. And I'm wiping them off with a damp paper towel. Just cleaning my mat. And we're just going to put finishing layer of epoxy over top of each of the cubes, and that's going to just really bubble the top and just make it a nice, beautiful photo that you want to display for everyone. Here I'm mixing up 3 ounces of the epoxy, 1 ounce for each picture, and I really think that that was a little bit too much. I probably could have got away with just splitting about 2 ounces between them, because I'm really just trying to put a layer that doesn't blow over the sides, and I'm going to end up smoothing that out with the tongue depressor, or stir stick, if you will. And just want it to touch all the sides to make a nice smooth finish over top. I am going to come back in and hit this layer with the heat gun, and you kind of want to give yourself a little space from the epoxy and the heat gun, because you don't want to blow the epoxy over the sides of the photo cube. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you try these resin cubes, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let us know. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.